Good morning and welcome to In the Loop Weekend Ag Talk brought to you by Alphen Insurance Agency. We hope you all had a great Christmas and are looking forward to a very happy new year, safe, healthy, and prosperous 2023. Let's jump into the markets and see what things were looking like on Friday afternoon. Just after 1 p.m. on Friday at the time of recording, lots of green on the board for soybeans and wheat, with corn and cotton floating into the red. Hopefully, everything closes out good on the last trading day of 2022. As a reminder, markets will be closed on Monday and everything will open back up and trading will resume on Tuesday. Looking at corn, March corn 679, September corn 626, March wheat 791, July wheat coming in at 801, March cotton 82.64, December cotton at 81.62, soybeans after a phenomenal week, January beans 15.19, November soybeans 14.17. When we look into ag news in the United States and in the world, the first thing we'll touch on is a massive spending bill that contains financial aid and climate incentives that would benefit farmers across the country. There's lots to unpack in the recently passed $1.7 trillion Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023. The money for conservation projects to aid for specific producers. The massive omnibus spending bill would significantly impact agriculture throughout 2023 and beyond. The appropriations bill allocates an additional $3.74 billion to offset crop losses due to droughts, wildfires, hurricanes, and floods. Another $494.5 million was earmarked for livestock disaster losses. An additional $1 million to research aflatoxin was also included in the bill. The issue has been a top priority for National Corn Growers Association. In a 2016 study, they estimated the mycotoxin cost corn producers between $52.1 million and $1.68 billion in annual losses. Cotton producers who endured financial hits due to pandemic related supply chain issues will also be eligible to receive USDA payments. Those payments will come from a $100 million fund included in the spending bill. Textile demand plummeted during the height of the pandemic. The relief will help stabilize the cotton sector as many producers suffered devastating losses from the season's extreme drought and other weather events, and merchandisers who suffered economic loss during COVID-19 pandemic, says National Cotton Council President Ted Snyder. Conservation proponents were pleased that the omnibus included no mandatory Farm Bill spending cuts for programs like the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, the Conservation Stewardship Program, and Regional Conservation Partnership Program, and the Conservation Reserve Program. The NRCS was allocated $941 million to provide conservation technical assistance. This is a $40 million increase from last year's budget. Leaders from various segments of agriculture had been pushing for H-2A visa reforms to address labor shortages and rising labor costs. Their pleas were not enough to overcome political opposition to allow more immigrant workers. When we look at wheat markets, the Russian wheat crop looks extremely good according to reports, and this could cause some bearish activity on wheat markets. Soybeans had a huge rally this week. The CME Hightower report shows very tight stocks to use ratio of 5%, making the market very bullish. This is a supply versus demand ratio. It's tighter than last year's, and remember, last year beans traded up into the $17 range. And if this market is even tighter, this ratio, we could see beans continue to climb. Look very closely at your marketing plan and try to capture some of this excitement. Brazil is finally getting some rain, but it's still extremely dry. Soybeans are likely advancing rapidly in development, and harvesting expected to begin in early February, but I still think we'll be in a strong deficit for soybeans when we look at everything in the numbers at the end of harvest. When we look in Argentina, showers brought isolated relief from warmth and dryness as large sections of central and northeastern Argentina continue to receive minimal amounts of rainfall. According to the government, corn and soybeans were around 70% planted as of December 22nd, lagging behind about 10 points from last year, and cotton was up quite a bit at 78% versus last year. Meanwhile, harvesting of wheat and barley were between 70 and 80% completed. It's still very dry there, and hoping that that'll continue to push the soybean rally to help us with prices to offset some of our input costs here in the U.S. Looks like the crazy home sale thing is finally starting to slow down a little bit. Looking at a report here, home sales are down for 6 months in a row. This is the lowest reading since the pandemic if you look at the past 20 years. They are down like 2008 through 2010. Some of that is due to interest rates. These numbers lag about 2 months behind interest rate changes, so we could see an uptick in home movements if interest rates start to drop over time. When we look at the weather outlook, a weakening La Nina could provide some drought relief over the next 10 days. It has been from extremely cold to warm and raining in our part of the world. Wouldn't be surprised if 1 to 3, in some spots better than 5 inches of rain come down in many parts of the eastern and southern corn belt, according to reports. It opens up a whole can of worms with higher humidity, higher dew points, and coarse footing issues for man and beast that will become quite precarious, whether it's mud or rain and melting snow in many areas, according to reports from Weather on RFD. When we look at 2022 ag numbers in review, $196.4 billion of U.S. exports, which was up 14% from 2021. You see the top leaders here are soybeans, corn, beef, and veal, with feeds, tree nuts, and dairy products also making the list. When you look at top markets, China leading the way at 36.4 billion, Canada and Mexico. There were a total of 32 markets where U.S. exports exceeded at least $1 billion in sales. There's lots of pictures to reflect on if you look at the screen this week as we look back in time and talk about cotton in North Carolina. Growing up in Rayford, North Carolina, I came to know cotton at an early age. We were a small mill town like many other towns in North Carolina. Burlington Industries was a major employer and supporter in our community. Hoke County was also a county that never gave up on cotton, even in the bad years. In the 70s and 80s, if one were to visit Hoke County and not be familiar with agriculture, they would ask, why is the side of the road always white? Well, our answer was always that it was either cotton or turkey feathers. In my childhood, Oakdale Gym was still running, and Hoke Robinson Gym was not built yet. Mr. John was on the cotton board, and Rick, Larry, and Roy were spraying cotton fields every summer and fall. Man, I loved to see them fly. That was always a dream job of mine. I was just too scared to pursue it. The 90s sent me to NC State and then began my career in the cotton industry, working with a good friend of mine at Carolina Picker Repair in Dunn. The summer of 1992 had me repairing cotton pickers for the first time in my life. By 1994, I was learning to plant, plow, and pick cotton. Fun times for me. I learned so much during these years. I'll never forget talking to Mr. JT about the old days of farming cotton with mules. Mr. Joe taught me lots about the boll weevil eradication program. Glenn taught me all about spraying cotton, and Wesley taught me how to tear down and put back together picker heads by day and how to run a shielded spray cultivator by night. It was one thing to grow up in a cotton community, but so much better when I had a chance to work in the industry and as an adult. Just change the names and change the town, and many of you could tell the same stories that I could tell about cotton in North Carolina. Let's investigate the cotton industry for a few moments. Cotton was a small-time crop prior to 1793 due to labor-intensive requirements to separate cotton seeds from cotton. For example, in the 18th century, 25 farmhands working on 25 cotton bales often took 100 days. That's 3.5 months to separate the seed from the crop. But when the Eli Whitney cotton gin was invented in 1793, it did the work of 10 men. The gin was improved and access spread. It encouraged North Carolina farmers to grow the crop, which could easily be sold. Crop was hauled overland or river boats to access points, Fayetteville, Columbia, Charleston, Cheraw, to ship north to power textile spinning mills. Beginning in 1840, cotton became a leading cash crop for most of North Carolina farmers. The first mill in North Carolina was established around 1815 near Lincolnton and operated until 1819. It was replaced by another Lincolnton area mill in 1819, which operated under different owners until 1863. Textile mills proliferated during the 1840s in Alamance and other Piedmont counties, reaching 45 mills operating by 1860. Cotton farming increased until the Civil War. The North Carolina cotton crop began to grow between 1860 with 145,514 bales and 1870 with 203,000 bales. Cotton production continued its steady increase until the 1920s. By 1880, North Carolina was growing 446,000 bales annually, placing the state in eighth place behind Mississippi, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Arkansas, South Carolina, and Louisiana. But the price of cotton continued to remain low in the post-war era, creating massive hardships for farmers. By 1900, North Carolina was producing 497,000 bales, which accelerated in the early 1900s to match the explosive growth of the textile industry. By 1925, North Carolina was producing over 1 million bales of cotton. The Great Depression in the 1930s and the boll weevil began a downward trend in growing cotton until 1980. The crop output was equivalent to 1840s. The boll weevil devastated cotton in the U.S. During the 1950s, the only way to control this pest was with multiple applications of insecticides. In the 1960s, researchers began to understand the importance of insect pheromones. This, plus using reproductive diapause methods to reduce populations, helped get boll weevil eradication efforts to around 99%. The 1990s introduced Bollgard and Roundup Ready technology, and the industry exploded in North Carolina. New gins were built, cotton picker sales and repair businesses were established, and North Carolina cotton acres grew to between 700,000 and 900,000 acres planted annually. Cotton continues to remain strong in North Carolina, but it is very dependent on markets. When prices are high, acres climb. When prices drop, acres drop. North Carolina had around 435,000 acres in 2022. Groups like Cotton Incorporated, North Carolina Cotton Producers Association, and North Carolina State University Cotton Extension work hard every day to keep the cotton industry moving forward in North Carolina, the U.S., and worldwide. Help support our cotton growers by purchasing and giving the gift of cotton every chance you get. We hope you enjoyed this look back in time as we touched on cotton production in North Carolina. Coming back to the office from lunch today, I was able to catch a podcast with Chris Barron from AgView Solutions talking with Joe Vaklovic from Standard Grain, and they were talking about 2023 crop budgets. A Midwest estimate for a 2,000 acre grower, they're saying, based off of customers that they have in their database already, that inflation has pushed input cost up about 10%, resulting in a working capital increase of around $190,000 on average for this 2,000 acre grower. Well, that about makes it a wrap for 2022. We wish you a happy new year. Thank you for tuning in to In the Loop Weekend Ag Talk, brought to you by Alphen Insurance Agency. We thank all the farmers who help feed and clothe the world. We wish you a safe, healthy, and successful 2023. Tell your friends about us. Like, share us on Facebook, YouTube, or however you may get us. And remember, keep mental health a priority around your farm and around your home. Make time for yourself and make time for those around you. give us a call. We'll come to you so you can focus on family and farming. Happy New Year.